nation is the problem that we see with investments and the cronyism with a company such as Goldman Sachs. And I don't see anything happening on the national level. I mean, the Republicans got us into this situation with Goldman Sachs. Mr. Obama comes into office, and it's business as usual with companies such as Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, and they have their tentacles in everything. How do we get their tentacles out of everything? Because I don't think until we get these two companies out of what they're doing that we're going to be able to restore the economy to what it was. So what are your thoughts on that process?
Well, I begin by saying that if you look at Goldman Sachs over the last 17 years in Washington, whether it's the Clinton administration, the Bush administration, or even over the last year, that Washington is littered with Goldman Sachs former employees. They're vested in the success of Goldman Sachs. And you're exactly right about their tentacles all across Washington. But the fact is we have to look at smart regulation. That's what got us into this is not Republicans and not Democrats. Look, I voted against the bailout. I don't care if it was Obama and Bush supporting it, both. I mean, it was a bipartisan blunder and an expensive one. We're still paying for it. And there was a far cheaper way. I'd be happy to talk to you about it. But what we need to see is smart regulation. Basically, you see a company like your examples that have gamed the system. And when you have billions of dollars worth of investment going against a very small regulator, who's going to get the best of it? The billions of dollars worth of capital behind it. So what got us into this is bad, dumb regulation. Stupid regulation. So rather than just saying, let's pass more, let's go back and make sure that we have full and complete disclosure. Let's make sure that there's complete disclosure when it comes to financial regulation. And for us, you can't go in and say, well, that's fine, we're mad at them, so just tax them. Well, they're banks. It's lending. So basic economics, if you want more of something, you don't tax it more. Right? So this proposal from the president is inventive, politically very nice, very, very tasty little idea here. But it's wrong and it's dumb. I mean, the fact is, if you start taxing banks, whether it's Scott at the Bank of Granite, what you're saying is lend less, pay the government more, right? What we need is to get these guys moving again and lending again, and that making sure that there's surety of regulation. If you didn't know what your regulator was going to say tomorrow, what would you do today? You would sit in a ball and rock back and forth, and that's what our banks are doing. And it's at the price of small business and jobs and our economic recovery. This happened in the 30s. I mean, you read the history of the Great Depression, the exact same thing happened. The banks were flush with cash and they weren't lending because Washington was crawling all over them with new regulations, new taxes, and then wondering why they wouldn't lend. So we need to make sure we have smart regulation, and that will shape this thing out. And this idea that any institution's too big to fail, we have to just say no. No. And that's why I voted against the bailout. Thanks.
David, anything on that?
Yeah, I certainly agree with the Congressman in terms of needing to get the regulatory system right. I mean, tremendous regulatory failures. We were talking about a poor financial regulatory system for years. I actually wrote a piece about the Bernie Madoff situation and why that is so indicative of our poor regulatory system. Here you had a situation which somebody clearly identified to the regulators for years what the problem was, and no action was taken on it. We need to go back to getting good, right regulators. Frankly, it's easy and justified at some level being mad at Wall Street. I mean, they've caused a lot of problems. And they certainly aren't helping themselves, I think, with the kind of tenured responses sometimes on their bonuses and compensation. But at the end of the day, the problem is really a lot bigger than Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan. It's our core regulatory system, and I agree with the Congressman that we need to go there first and foremost.